Men who have been raped, what happened or how did you recover? Story 1. I was 9 and with my aunt. My stomach was in pain. She asked to look into it and went down on me. It happened for a few years. I didn't know what's happening at that time, but when I shared it with my friends later, they called me a pussy. I also shared it with my ex during adulthood. She was sympathetic at first, but then used it against me during any fights. Now, I have trust and intimacy issues and feel that I won't ever experience what it feels to be in a healthy relationship. I feel like Charlie from the book Perks of Being a Wallflower. Story 2. Was raped by an uncle, retired military firefighter from 7 to 13 years old. Violence and pain were his thing. Pretty standard story of using threats of killing me and my mom or my older brother if I ever spoke about it. Finally stood up to him just before my 14th birthday. From 13 to 18 years old, I kind of junked out and started down the road of self-deprecating behavior. Finally told my parents at 18 years old, and of course no one believed me. 56 now, never had any quality relationships, nor have I ever been able to find therapy to alleviate the trust and intimacy issues that I carry. So the truth of the matter is I never really recovered from it. This morning when I woke up and wrote these few short sentences, I never could have expected so much support and genuine compassion. I'll admit that writing the post brought a lot of things to the surface that I hadn't given any attention to in some years, and I've never spoken openly about any of this prior to today. I've only spoken to about 24 people my entire life about it. That includes 7 therapists, so to say I've been a little soggy today is a bit of an understatement. I do believe a touch of my faith in humanity was restored today. Just thanks. Story 3. When I was 7, I attended sleepover as a part of my neighborhood key troop. Keys are junior Boy Scouts in my country. There were 30-ish boys all sleeping around the outside of this enormous gymnasium, and I woke in the middle of the night to the 30-something-year-old scout leader hovering above me. He was doing something that it took me years to understand. He then took my underwear and put them in the front pocket of my backpack and whispered to me that he was just changing my underwear because I had wet my pants, and if I didn't want my parents to be mad at me, I best not tell them about this. Many years later, in my 20s, I was shopping at the local Kmart when he walked up to me to ask if I needed help finding anything. Turns out he worked there. I got away from him as quickly as I could. Truth be told, I don't have particularly strong feelings about the whole thing other than a constant feeling of guilt about how many other boys he may have done it to since. Story 4. Not raped but saw, 17 years old, second day ever at work. Late 30s woman grabbed me by the testicles saying you like this big boy and twisted. I ended up in ED that night with a testicular torsion. Lost lefty. Reported to HR. They said I had no complaint as I would have liked it. Sued them. HR lost evidence and said no complaint was ever made. During discovery, a newbie in HR, the only male, put a do not release file into the box accidentally. The lawyer for the employer immediately offered to settle. 12 HR employees were sacked, all female, whose initials appeared on the missing file that they all said never existed. No charges ever got laid on any HR nor the woman who SA me. They based their case on not that I was injured but on it never happening at work, and I would have reported it to them if it did. Thus hiding that I reported it strengthened their case. That blew that claim up when my lawyer got hold of a file with my complaint and things written on it like how do we make this go away and some other vile comments. Story 5. I had several similar incidents to a lesser degree when I was a banquet server. Drunk women literally sticking their hands down my pants while I was at work. Groping, lewd comments, and then complaints about me when I declined to reciprocate. Had a lady hand me her damp panties and finger wave me towards the bathroom. I threw them in the garbage and walked away to wash my hands. Vile. It's absolutely abhorrent how people respond when you tell them you were a victim of SA at your workplace by a customer. Never received a shred of empathy, and quite often the opposite from anyone I've told. Like full on, sounds like a great job for a handsome guy like you in their 20s. What? If I was a woman, I'd have several organizations showing up at my door offering to sew the pants off my former employers and the offending parties. Men go to prison for decades for shit I've been laughed at for receiving with genders reversed. If anything, it's made me very intolerant of unwanted public advances by anyone I see. I shame guys and girls equally when I see it. I put in a lot of effort to resist having a misogynistic view of the world, but the women I've encountered in my life make it so goddamn hard. I'm betting that you reading this are thinking of a joke about women making me hard right now, proving my precise point. Cut that out. Story 6. He was my best mate. We were 19. He put on a game he knew well and declared that the loser of every round had to drink. When that didn't work, he gave me pills he said were ecstasy. Scene missing. Scene missing. Suddenly I'm face down and my butthole hurts. He sat on the edge of the bed crying and throws me out. I tell nobody but my partner, and we never speak again. Many years later, said partner tries to get us to reconnect. I broke up with her on the spot, which was the right call, as I found out later she wanted a three-way with my the I was okay with, sort of. I didn't remember anything, really, but that fucked me up. It took me years to trust anyone again, but I did. The love of someone good is the best curative possible, but if you can't get that, talk to a professional. And if you can't do that, a friend. And if you can't do that, internet strangers. Just don't let it fester. Story 7. It happened to me at 8 when my parents would send me to get them some stuff from a mom and pop store. The owner wouldn't be there sometimes, and it would be the assistant instead, and at that time she looked like she was in her 30s. All I know is that she would use Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards to lure me closer to her. I trusted her that she wouldn't do anything bad since she was an employee. And one time I asked her if she had some cards in stock, and she said she thinks so, but the boxes are in the bathroom, which they were because the place was pretty small, and when I went in, she closed the bathroom door, put my pants down, and she went down on me and gave me a hand job. I was so scared to death because as an 8-year-old, you're not going to understand anything of what's going on, not understand certain feelings and sensations. She traumatized me to the point that I no longer wanted to go to the store, and every time she was around my heart would race so fast and I would get extremely uncomfortable around her. She would put her hands on me and I would just absolutely hate it. I developed trauma from people touching me without my consent. So whenever someone touches me in a way that can be felt or seen as intimate, I shut down and clam up so fast. I don't like anyone whom I don't have deep trust with to be touching me at all. Even my friends now and then startle me and I tense up so bad. I get anxiety and feel like something terrible is going to happen even if it doesn't. Story 8. My brother did various things by framing it as a game of truth or dare. Despite being a strong and threatening dude already, he didn't have to threaten physical violence. He just had to threaten to tell our mother, which is a highlight of the level of emotional abuse from that end of the family. Broke away from the family that's most inane at 24, got therapy, learned Krav Maga for personal safety, then dated someone especially abusive, another abuse instance, get more therapy, take a 4-year break from dating to finish school and get a job, and start a great relationship. At age 36, my life couldn't be better. Story 9. Was on a football trip when much younger, and this girl who was in the hotel with her friends told me she wanted to fuck me. I said I had a girlfriend and it wasn't going to happen, but thanks for the ego boost. I went to bed that night after drinks, and my mate who was sharing the room with me told me this girl was going around the hotel trying to find my room and had found out where I was. He told me to move the room, so I did, and she didn't find me that night. Next day, the same thing happened. We all ended up back at the hotel after clubbing, and she wouldn't leave me alone. I traded rooms with another friend and went and drunkenly crashed in his room. She somehow got in and was sucking my dick, trying to make it hard, and was trying to put a condom on me at least. Another friend saw what was happening, door left open apparently, and shoot her out. I passed out again to wake up to her backed up against me and using my morning wood for sex without a condom this time. It took me a while to realize what was going on, and I eventually told her to get out. Obviously, I then had a massive panic as I had to go home to my girlfriend, and all the lads on the bus knew I'd had sex with somebody. I was about 18 or 19 at the time. My girlfriend wanted sex when I got home, and I obviously couldn't do it due to the condom, so told her what happened, and she went fucking mental and accused me of cheating on her. At the time, I didn't even realize that I'd done nothing wrong apart from being too drunk to protect myself, and it led to us breaking up for a while before she eventually forgave me. I got an STI from that girl too and had to take a course of tablets. It was a really fucked up situation from somebody old enough to have known better and extremely predatory. I wish I'd been smart enough to realize what was happening, but this was the late 90s and rape against men wasn't a thing that was really thought about. Story 10. I was 15, had a girlfriend, but I was watching Super Troopers at a friend's house drinking and smoking weed when I fell asleep. I woke up choking on him and immediately vomited, but I was so tired and confused. His brother came down asking what was going on, but was reassured everything was on the up and up. I fell asleep again. When I woke up next, this friend was on top of me and inside of me. Panic and fear, that's all I can remember. Told me to keep it our secret or else he'd tell everyone I was gay, which at the time to me was a social death sentence. He groomed me for months before that and continued to abuse me for another year after. He broke into my house and chased me, pinned me to the couch, showed up at my house in the middle of the night. Years have passed since then and he has since passed. I was 15 when it happened the first time. You never recover, you just adapt. You become more protective of yourself and others, more empathetic, more sympathetic, more angry, so much more angry. I've come close to ending my story on several occasions, but seem to talk myself out at the last moment. These days, I don't trust any man and am constantly in fight or flight. It's exhausting. Story 11. I was raped by two 18-ish-year-old men when I was 9. Life of drug addiction, and I did not know what was wrong with me. My dad was drinking with their father and doing coke. Drug dealer house, I don't know. Anyways, 28 now. I forgot the entire event that changed my life until 2 years ago. So the trauma of it caused so much pain and agony, but I could not remember it, and I've only just now started to figure things out. So my life was dark and I felt broken for a very long time. Decades of confusion, and then one day at 26 years old, it all came flooding back to me. I feel bad for that little boy, but I will continue to not be the victim. Story 12. When I was 16, I was arrested for burglary and spent 6 months in a juvenile facility. One of the counselors sexually assaulted me and several other boys. When he was on night duty, he would show us and ask us to compare the size of our penises to one another. He would also show us how to huff inhalants. One of his favorite games he called a space monkey, which involved a boy standing against a wall while the counselor would have his hands on our throats. He'd squeeze until we passed out and watch us wake back up. I sliced my arm open with a razor blade that I stole from a staff member so that I could go to the hospital to tell someone about the abuse. It took 20 stitches to close my arm. Children and Youth Services, as well as the state police, opened an investigation. The boys were sent home, the facility was shut down, and a lawsuit followed. I'm 32 now and am still haunted by it. Story 13. I got drunk at her birthday party and went to sleep in her bed because she told me I could. I was drinking underage, so there was no way I was going anywhere until I was sober. I woke up with her on top of me. That's also how I lost my virginity. I recovered for the most part. I still have issues with women I don't know touching me, and am more reserved than I used to be. Story 14. 2 instances. First was a coworker of my older brother that offered to buy me alcohol when I was 14. I started drinking young, so I was excited about the offer. Turns out she expected a transactional relationship that didn't involve money. It made me feel sick at the time, but I went back for a while. My friends would beg me to suck it up and go get us booze. Every time I did it, I would leave feeling physically ill. She was 26. Second happened when I was 16. I got way too drunk at a party and vomited violently, couldn't stand, passed out cold. I have a vague memory of waking up to my face being grinded by a vagina. When I woke up the next day, the girl whose house it was at told me we hooked up. I literally was still wearing the shirt that had vomit on the front. I'm not sure what happened besides that brief memory. I didn't really deal with it until my late 20s when I finally got sober. Therapy helped a lot. I don't really tell anyone about it. Almost every time I've brought it up to male friends or ex-girlfriends, they've responded with "sounds like a good time, haha," or mockery. When I met my wife and shared these stories with her after dating for a few months, she responded with so much sympathy and... Story 15. I was 15 at the time, in a very abusive relationship. I told my parents, they kinda blew it off, and still do. I told very few friends, and they tried to help as much as they could, but they understandably couldn't do much. I've thought about going to therapy for it, but I haven't made it there yet. Made me not trust women for a few years until I met a very lovely lady that actually listened to me and helped me through it. She was my first relationship since I was 15. I was 19 when I met her, so there was a lot of stuff I didn't know how to do. And she stuck with me through learning basic relationship stuff. She was great, but we broke up after a year. She lived almost 2 hours away, and she wanted me to move near here, and I wasn't ready for that yet. But still, she really helped me patch myself up and get used to relationships again. She's an amazing woman, and I hope she's doing everything she wants to do. I'm not fully recovered though. There's always some cracks that are there. I just got out of another bad relationship where I was cheated on, and I spiraled for a bit, but I think I'm back on track. Story 16. A woman I had dated a couple of times came over to my place for dinner. We hadn't slept together, but we had kissed. We drank a few glasses of wine. I mentioned I had some neck tension. She offered to give me a massage. She said she used to be a massage therapist. I was laying on my back on the floor. As she massaged me, I fell asleep. I woke up at some point later, my pants were pulled down and she was riding me. As soon as I realized what was happening, I made the excuse I needed to pee and got up and went to the bathroom. When I came back, she smiled sheepishly and said, "Sorry, I couldn't help myself. When you fell asleep, I noticed you were hard. We can try again later if you want." I made a joke at the time and said only if I'm awake for it, but the whole thing really freaked me out because I didn't give any kind of consent and the sex was unprotected and I would never normally do something like that. We didn't sleep together again that night. What's confusing about it is that I was attracted to her and sex was likely, but it was only when I mentioned the situation to a woman I'm close friends with she suggested it sounded like I was raped. I was like, nah. I think I wanted it to happen. It was just a weird thing to do is all. But the truth is I felt totally taken advantage of and put at risk. I never told anyone else. Story 17. This is going to sound like a Dear Penthouse scenario to some, but it's my trauma, so whatever. I was dating a girl who had some really messed up stuff to me already. A lot of cheating, a lot of gaslighting, a lot of manipulation. We were on another on-again period and things seemed to be going okay. She'd always avoided having any contact with my ex-wife. Ex-wife is a bit of a train wreck, but not evil. Just we had problems that fed into one another and made things untenable. Still, the current girlfriend at the time had insane levels of jealousy towards ex-wife. They finally end up in a situation where they have to interact and immediately begin flirting behind my back. Girlfriend denies that this is happening, but the ex-wife produces the receipts. When pressed, girlfriend admits that she wants to explore her bisexuality and has hang-ups about it from how she was brought up. I express displeasure with the choice as the ex-wife already has unhealthy habits of trying to push affection onto me. Girlfriend turns this from me having an issue with this person in particular turns it into that I don't want her to explore who she is and I'm stifling her. She starts going over to ex-wives on her days off even though I'm not okay with it. Calls me asking for permission to go farther because they're making out while I'm there watching her kids. I realize this is going to happen whether I want it to or not. By this point, I'm determined I have to go through with this or my girlfriend will leave. Why I was so determined for that not to happen, I'll never know, but at that point, that's where I was. Finally get everyone together. Threesome starts to happen. I have a legit 100% panic attack. Ex-wife is mortified, girlfriend feigns sympathy. Girlfriend pulls me into the bathroom and tells me how I'm going to do this because I love her and I just had to deal. I let it go through. Affection steadily decreases between girlfriend and I. She switches up and stops talking to ex-wife and says that I cheated. Now I'm really standoffish. I stay to myself. Don't talk to anyone. Don't date. Don't have much interest. I've thrown myself into my work and that's how I deal. Story 18. My ex stealthed me by lying about birth control. She did not like that I was still being cautious even when I thought she was on the pill, so one day at a party she was bringing me drink after drink I didn't ask for. I didn't think anything of it because it was a party. She took advantage of me while I was drunk later that night so she could lock her legs around me and stop me from pulling out. I was in denial about it until I brought it up in a feminist subreddit and had multiple people telling me it was rape. The fact that the feminists were the ones who told me I was raped by this woman was enough to eliminate any denial I had over this. I did not recover. I tried to stay with her for the first 2 years of the baby's life just to do the right thing. I had to watch people congratulate my for the pregnancy while I pretended I was okay. She also continued to rape me throughout those 2 years. Every time I was too tired for sex and she stayed up screaming and crying until I gave in. It took catching her cheating for me to finally leave. I still pay child support to this day. I am also actively involved in the child's life and put on a smile just for her, but inside I'm miserable because I never wanted kids and was forced into it. If I ever try to talk about it, there is always some who tries to victim blame. It's so hard for people to accept the idea that a man can be a victim. Story 19. I was 11, my step-aunt was taking care of me and 4 of my siblings while my mom was in the hospital giving birth. She would make me stand in front of a mirror naked and point out everything she didn't like about my body fat forming around my underwear line, my big lower lip, my darker skin, etc., then force me to go down on her before ultimately using me as a toy whenever she wanted. She threatened to tell my very stepfather that my siblings were being bad so they would get beatings if I ever told anyone. Which the fear of my siblings being hurt the way I was over the many years was the only thing keeping me from running away. I eventually told someone my ex about 14 years later just to be ridiculed and have it thrown back in my face like I was the one who someone. I still haven't recovered. I still see every issue my step-aunt pointed out to this day even with about 4 years of therapy. It doesn't haunt me anymore though, not like it used to.